WP Get. Get found. Real people, real solutions.
Okay, so this is my second go at this tutorial. I did an initial one, and as I was doing it, I learnt some new things about Elementor. So I thought I'd redo it and make it much easier. So this is based on a post in the Elementor community on Facebook. And the question is, how do we get this kind of layout in a section with these blobs and colors? So this is my method, or one method of doing it, and I'm just going to run through that now. So on our demo site that we use for creating these tutorials, I've got a blank page, and the first thing I'm going to do is add a section. I'm going to add some padding at the top and the bottom of that section, say 100 pixels will do, and I'm going to give that just a solid background color for now. I'll just make it my secondary color. And there we go, we've got a good start and a single column. Now let's look at this. What we're looking for is a 2-column layout in effect, where we've got on the left hand side we've got a logo and some copy down the bottom here. On the right hand side we've got a logo and we've got a form. Then we'll look at the backgrounds for that. So what we need here is 2 columns. So I'm just going to add a column. So we've got 2 columns here. So I'm going to start from the right-hand column here, because that's where most of the content is, which will determine the height of this and affect the placement of the backgrounds on the left-hand side here. So to get started, I'm going to first add a intersection. And the reason we need the intersection is because we want the blob here, this white blob, to appear behind it, so we need something for it to be on top of. So the intersection there, we only need a single column. And inside that intersection, I'm going to put a basic heading. And what does that one say? Let's talk. I'll just put let's talk there. And I think there was another one underneath, another smaller heading, which will make it heading 3. And what did it say? Reach out and get to know us. Okay, and then we've got a form underneath that. Please excuse all the road noise of where I am here. Now I'm not going to worry about styling this form. That's another question, I guess, altogether. We could do, but the point of this is working out how do we get these layouts. So I'm just going to leave that form as it is. Now looking at this, the form is relatively narrow, so to get there I'm just going to move this column across a little bit there, so it gives us more of the section on the left, and the form is just on the right hand side, which is more like what we've got here. Okay, so how do we get the blob in the background? Now there's lots and lots of ways we can do this. So I'm going to show you what I think is a very simple way, and that's using an HTML element. An HTML widget, I should say, and use the correct terms. Now it's got to be outside of that intersection. So if we look at the navigator here, the HTML there, they've got the intersection underneath it, which has got the form and everything in it. And the reason we do that is because we want these to be separated from each other. We want whatever's in this HTML to appear underneath this content here. So the next thing we're going to do, oops, I just accidentally dragged and dropped that. So the next thing we're going to do is we've got to create a blob. Now you can create this in many tools. You can use Canva, you can use Adobe Illustrator or any other drawing tools to create that. For this demonstration, I'm going to use a website called blobmaker.app, and it doesn't give you a lot of control over what the blob is, but you can create some things here and make it look pretty cool. So the left-hand slider here is the number of nodes. So as you put more nodes in there, you get more curves. And the right-hand side is how smooth. So smooth is almost a circle through to this, which is very pointy. So if we roll the dice on that, we get all sorts of weird looking things. So I'm going to pick something that's, because it's a form, that looks like a pretty decent one for the form. Which we'll be able to house all our fields inside here. So let's just say we want to use that. So to use this shape, we click on the button down here with the two arrows and we copy that SVG to our clipboard. Go back to our Elementor element. Whoops. And click on the HTML and paste the SVG into that box there. Now, we want that background to be white. I didn't make it white, or you can't make it white over here because it just doesn't have those facilities. It doesn't have the white color because you can't change the background, but that's just how this thing here works. So we can change that fill here to FF, which is white. Okay, now we've got a white blob. So we need to get that to appear behind this and change the sizes of it. So to make it appear behind it, we go to the positioning and we set the position to absolute. And now it's appearing behind there. Okay, so because it's behind this, we can't easily edit it. So we need to make it a little bit bigger or move it aside. So let's just use this slider here. We'll move it to the side there, okay? And as you see, as I move this, you can see this little bar here. Now, unfortunately, this blob maker leaves a lot of white space around the outside. So that's why we're seeing a bit of a gap between that and that. If you created these shapes in Canva or Elementor, this blue border around it's probably going to be a lot closer to the shape. So let's just look at this cool thing here in Elementor where we can just drag that and resize. You do kind of have to let go of it before it actually changes the size. So just keep changing that until it gets to where we want it to be. Let's say that's what we want. Okay, so there's our blob. Now, we need to look at the left-hand side. And we have to do the same thing over here. Let's create a different blob. Make it less, maybe less of these. Roll the dice. Just grabbing a few till I get sort of roughly what I want. I want it kind of narrow and, it's not very high but wider. I guess that'll do for now. So I'm going to grab another HTML element. And I'm going to just drag it into this column and go back to our blob maker. I'm going to copy the SVG for that, copy the clipboard and stick it in there. Now we've got another color there. Another blob there. Same deal, go back to it and make it positioned absolute. And there it is there. Okay, so with this same deal, you can just drag that across the side. What we find though is that you get to a point where you can't drag it far enough, you might have to edit this. Now this slider, when you slide it goes to 1000, so you might end up manually putting that in at say 1400, say 1600, whoops. Maybe 1600, drag that to there. Like that maybe. Now, there's a couple of issues here. One is this isn't the color we want. So what color do I? Let's say I want to make that my primary color. I'd have to go into my site settings, find my primary color, copy that. Go back to this HTML here, and I'm going to change that to my primary color. Now, these aren't gradients yet, but I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. So there you go. Now, one of the issues I'm seeing here, you see the blob here is going beyond this section and it's actually creating overflow. So I'm seeing overflow on this page. Now we need to correct that. So how do we correct that? So what we need to do is set the overflow for this section so that it's hidden. So we're going to go into the advanced custom CSS selector, select the keyword selector in Elementor refers to the wrapper for this element, so for the section here. So I'm going to make the overflow hidden. Okay, and what I notice in here is that in the editor you see no difference whatsoever. It just doesn't work. The reason for that is there's actually a rule, CSS rule in the editor that is more specific than this. So on the front end it works, but on the back end it doesn't. For it to work in the editor, you have to add the important keyword so that this rule takes precedence. I generally try to avoid using the important keyword on CSS because it interferes with the hierarchical application of CSS, and it can make it difficult to find problems. So we've got a blob there, and what we're going to do is just make the section a gradient instead, and we might make that from primary through to my secondary color. Okay, so we're getting somewhere with this. Now, on here, we also had some content down the bottom left here. So how do we do that? So easiest way, I'm going to use my logo. So I'm just going to grab an image and just drag it into this box here. Okay, now I see a problem straight away. The image here is underneath this box. So what I need to do is change the z-index on this. I'm going to go to the advanced. I'm going to set my z-index on that image to be, say, 5. It could be any number. Now that puts it on top of this. So probably a better idea would be just find the least we need. So 1, 2. So z-index 2 puts it on top of here. Go over to our HTML on this blob over here, and we're going to set our index to 2. So now that appears on top of here. Now our form's disappeared, so we're going to go to the intersection. We're going to set the z-index on that to 3. So that appears on top. So what we're saying is that this is 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so back to our image. We're going to pick a logo. I'll just pick my logo and put it on there. And what we're finding with that logo is that it's centered because it's taking up the whole width, and it's sitting at the top, which we don't want. We want it to sit down the bottom here. So to do that, we go to the advanced positioning. We set the width to inline, so that it just takes up the space of the actual size of that image. And we're going to set the position to absolute. I'm going to stick it to the left, and then we're stick it on the bottom. And there it is down the bottom there. Now, I'm just going to publish this and take a quick look and see what it looks like. Okay, so that's not looking too bad on the front end. We certainly don't have the same colors, but we've got the same concept. We now need to look at how does this look on tablets and mobiles. So on a tablet, we want to look at the tablet view. So we select the responsive mode and click tablet. That still looks fine to me. What you can do is in the tablet mode, grab the edge of this blob here, and you can actually move that across and say you want it to be there on the tablet. Mobile, there it is there. Maybe you want that different. Maybe you want it to be more like this. Maybe you want some more spacing for this image here. So I would then grab that. Grab the image. These get very hard to select when you've got absolute positioning. So this navigator comes in very, very important. You can also in Elementor, just so you know, in here you can actually double click on these and call these, for example, logo, so it's easier to find. You can call this the left blob. So you can name these so that they're easier to find. I might pick that logo there, and I'm going to go to the positioning in here. So because it's absolute, I can just change the vertical from here, maybe just move it up a little bit on mobile, or you can just drag it. Whoops. It's actually not letting me do this because of the positioning of this. So it's because as I said, with the CSVs that we get from the blob maker, it's got all this white space around it here. So when I try and select up here, I'm actually still pointing at that. So I'd have to make the position of that higher than this to be able to select it, which we can do. Let's say, actually, this is not a bad idea. Let's go there and we'll make the logo Z-index. We'll make that, say, 10. And now we can click on that and move it around. So on a mobile, we might put it there. So, yeah. All right, now going back to our tablet, that's how it looks. Going back to our desktop, that's how it looks. So I'm pretty happy with that as view the page. Okay, so that pretty much does exactly what you're wanting to do over here. Obviously different shapes, different colors, but that's the process that you would use to get this kind of layout. Okay, so how do we turn this shape into a gradient? We've got a gradient in the background for the section. So if we look at this, we've got a bit of a gradient there. Obviously this on that angle, it's different colors. We can certainly easily change that by just looking at our gradient angles, changing our colors. I've just got from our primary to secondary color at the moment, and there's our primary color down here. Now with the SVG, it's a little bit more difficult because you've actually got to change the way this works. Look, if you're familiar with SVGs, you can certainly change this XML for the SVG and you can edit it there. I use Illustrator. So I'm going to copy this SVG here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my temp folder and I'm going to call this new. I'll just make a text file for now. I'm going to call that blob with gradient. Blob with gradient. And the other thing we'll do is we'll make it a bit wider while we're in Illustrator as well, because it's not wide enough for me to fill the screen. So blob with gradient dot SVG. Yes, I do want to change that. Okay, so I'm going to right click on that SVG that I've just created. So if we just look, oops, if I right click on that and just have a look at it with Notepad, and then paste the SVG into there from where we got from the HTML code, and save that. Okay, so now I'm going to right click on it again and I'm going to open it with Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so there's our SVG that we've brought in from this code here, which is this blob here. Okay, so what we want to do is, as I said, I'm going to make it wider first because I think it's not wide enough for our design. So I'm going to make it a bit wider. I'm going to make the artboard just fit that a little bit. So I don't have so much space around it. Okay, now we want it to be a gradient. At the moment, that's just my primary color. So I'm going to make a gradient here, and I'm going to go from my primary to my secondary. So to get those, I'll come back to my Elementor site settings, global colors. There's my primary. So I want that to be from there, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to double click there, change that to RGB, and just paste it into there. Okay, and the other end I want to be my secondary color, which is this one here. So I'm just going to copy that and double click there and go to RGB and paste it into there. Okay, so I've got a primary to secondary gradient. Okay, so I'm just going to shorten that a bit, rotate it. So this is roughly the gradient that I want. Hang on, that'll do. So I've now created a gradient inside that shape which I've stretched. So I'll select that shape, File, Export Selection. I'm going to put it to the same folder, the temp folder. I'm going to call this gradient new, that'll do. And select the SVG as the asset type and export it. Okay. So in my temp file, I've got a bit of rubbish in there at the moment. There it is there. So if I right click on that and then edit with Notepad or Notepad++, that is the SVG I need now. So I'm going to select that, copy that, whoops, copy that, go back to my Elementor, close out of here. Okay. Now this editor's doing some funny things when we do this. So what's happening here is because I've got the overflow hidden, every time I change something, that changes. So let's go back, select that again, just so we can see what's going on. So primary to secondary. Now I can see the gradient. So I'll select this HTML here, and I'm going to replace that with what I just did in Illustrator. Now, obviously, it's a completely different size because the viewport that Illustrator is set up is different. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our advanced, our positioning. I'm going to make that actually not a 1600 wide, make it a bit smaller, so you can start with 1000. Grab that, drag it down to there. Maybe make it a bit bigger than 1000, say 1300, 1200 maybe. Drag it across a bit more. There we go. Update that. View the page. So now we've got a gradient blob in the background there. We've got a white blob in the background there. And as we change our page size, everything still looks good. So we still get that there. This drops down there. That's a bit too wide there, so we might actually do something about that on the mobile view. This is the kind of stuff that you need to worry about when you do have these kinds of backgrounds. So, in fact, actually, I will go back in there and I will actually edit that. So what I'm going to do is look at the breakpoint, oops, at which that happened. So it's really in the tablet view, or below the tablet view, just below tablet, I think. So tablet, Still looks okay. Mobile. Maybe we can bring that across a bit there. So there's our breakpoint there. So maybe we need to grab that HTML there, move that across a bit. Maybe we need to put some padding on the side of this form there. So let's do that. So let's put some padding on the side of that. On the right, bring that in. Put some on the left as well. Move that. We'll bring this across. So that works for us. Tablet view, full screen view. So let's have a look now. It's not so bad. There we go. So you probably want to look at some different breakpoints here to change the way that looks, but this is the kind of stuff that you have to do when you have these fancy layouts where you've got columns with forms, etc. So something you need to be very aware of. Okay, thank you.
WP Get. Get found. Real people, real solutions. Call us on 07 3708 1021. Visit us at www.wpget.net.